REENTRY UNCUT.
It's time to change the narrative. It's time to change the narrative.
What's going on, family? Welcome to another episode of REENTRY UNCUT. This is a very special episode today because we have some very special people with us. Paula Carballido, Juan Carballido, the Carballido twins. We were calling him Twan before camera started rolling, so you have been inducted into the hood now, brother.
Yeah,
you're part of us.
so.
This is really a family affair here, and I'm just so excited. There's so many ways we're connected. We talked about that behind the scenes, but we really want to talk to you all. We have an amazing success story with you, Juan, and family, as far as how you all came together, and you've been campaigning for Juan and his situation as a second chance story. And so if we could, a lot of people, I won't say a lot, maybe a few people may not know the story, and so we want you all to explain it because it's heavy. You all need this. It's uncut. And Miss Paula, if we could start with you. We know that Juan got into a situation and he spent some time in prison, and you all and your family campaigned for him in ways that really had an effect on you and your family. I want to get into that, but first I want to talk to you about who you are and what you've been doing in the community, and how that was just an easy transition for you to go and help your brother because of the work that you already do. So you have helped veterans.
Yeah.
You have been there for the base, I want you to just explain it all. Talk to us about it.
So, interestingly enough, I got involved with doing community work after my brother's situation. So I didn't do any of that prior. So I don't know if you knew that. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so most people were like, oh, you've always done this? And I was like, no, it's actually in response to a situation that I couldn't control. So in my... I was just seeking to do something with my life that I had control over, and not where I needed to be in control, but I needed to be able to, decide the outcomes of things. In his case, I couldn't do that. I could work really hard to advocate for him in his case, but it didn't transition into my life in terms of feeling like I was doing something, positive to change the community. So from that is where I got the passion to say, well, if I can do this with his case, and I needed a little break, the prison system and working within it and advocating for prison reform and criminal justice reform is a daunting task. Every day things seem to get even harder and more difficult to fight. So I needed a break. And so I went out and I was like, okay, what can I do in the community? So I just had a heart to serve the youth. When this happened to my brother, he was 17. So I went out and I found the Exchange Club in North Chicago, which is a civic organization that does work with the youth and child abuse prevention and Americanism. And from there, found the veterans and took a break from prison reform and criminal justice reform and found another space where God can use my skills and talents and serve them in the community.
Now this is amazing because I didn't know. I thought you came straight from Harvard, and you've been working. You gotta give us the backdrop on that because there's some things you all might not know that's really gonna touch your heart.
Yeah. So interesting. So people meet me, and those that have known me for a long time, always will say, well, what school did you go to or what college? I'm like, well, I graduated from Highland Park High School, but I only went to college 1 year and then dropped out, and then this happened in 2004. So. I didn't go to college, so most people are like, oh, you must have this great education. And I'm like, no, everything I learned was from people that God sent my way that said, hey, I see something in you and I want to help. Let's go have breakfast. Let's meet for coffee. Let me tell you about this organization, or let me tell you about what I see in you. And they poured things into me in terms of life and a vision of someone that I didn't know I could be. And they spoke life into that. And from there, it blossomed into who I am. But prior to this, I was the one that was in the streets, hanging out with people that were in different gangs. I was looking for just a group of people to, make me feel like I was part of something. Even though I had a great family at home, I needed something else. And so I went out and made poor life choices, drank too much, and just was trying to fill a hole in my life. And then my brother's situation happened, and it was like God was saying, all right, enough, and now I have something else for you to focus on. And so that's really where I turned around, and I was like, man, I should be the one that should have been incarcerated. Wow. I should be the one that should be going through what he was going through. And in a way, God said, no, now you're going to help him.
Wow.
So, yeah, I don't get to share it often, but I share it as an encouragement to people that look at someone and think like, oh, that person has it together. I don't have it together. I'm a believer that's under construction, and I will be until the day that God calls me home. And I've learned that through this season of 13 years of advocating and watching God answer prayer. That's an incredible thing, to see him work in miraculous ways that I can testify and say, I saw God do this.
Well, you are an incredible story because many of us know the work that you do in the community. You have been a strong, long-time advocate for veterans and many more people. And so I can just say I'm shocked. And you can never tell a book by its cover. You're truly a new creation in Christ.
Yes, amen.
And so we're excited just to. There's so many stories. Matter of fact, this probably be a 3-part show. Cornell, you're gonna have to help us with this. I don't know what we're gonna do with this because you just took us into a whole nother direction. But we're so proud of you and the work that you've done, and just seeing that this situation has caused you to want to be an advocate for your brother and many more people. Man, hats off to you. Kudos. Want to talk to my brother Juan. You gotta, first of all, the beard is still crispy. I used to take it, I think I cut your beard one time.
One time and it's still crispy, man.
And it's still crispy. Just from that one time that I cut it, it's still right. So, but this is, my brother, I appreciate, the fact that you've gone through what you've gone through. We met recently, and just seeing him doing some things with the Coalition of the Township. What was it? Rita Mayfield had an event, and he came near, and just to see people going after it, and you're still out there, you're going after it, you're making it happen 2 years after being released from prison. So tell us your story of what caused Paula to even step in, the rest of the family to want to advocate for you. What happened, and how did that make you feel? However you want to talk about it, bring us into your story.
Well, for me, I was a teenager. I was 17 at the time. I was about a month away being 18. At the time, I was going to high school. I was hanging out with my friends at school and stuff. Let's say earlier in the day, I think some stuff happened at school that pretty much followed us kids into our neighborhood pretty much, because everybody knows everybody and stuff. So a situation happened, and I'm not going to say I was hanging around with the wrong people. I'm going to say I was just hanging around with my friends from my neighborhood pretty much. So I'm not going to say they're not gamingers, which they were. So I was heading in the wrong direction. But at the same time, I was just a teenager, just hanging around with kids, doing teenager stuff. And one summer day, it was after school, I believe, a situation happened where a drive-by shooting happened. Somebody unfortunately passed away. At that moment, it never really hit me to find out how much it was gonna impact me as far as my life, changing my life, and taking a different course. I unfortunately got incarcerated at the age of 17. I got found guilty of first-degree murder at the age of 19. I went to prison at the age of 19. And I spent my last 13 and some couple months incarcerated in there.
Can you tell me I know what it's like to do 2 years in prison. For people who don't even understand what it's like to go to the county, how did that affect you? Being away from family, getting support from the outside. How did that affect your psyche being in there 13? I want to say that again, 13 years. How did that affect you?
It affected me pretty bad. One, I was a teenager. I didn't know what was going on. Two, having to have my family go through it, it was pretty hard. At the age of 17, you don't know no better.
Mm-hmm.
For me, at that time, I was confused. I was scared. I was lost. I couldn't really look forward to ask somebody like, what's going on? What's going to happen now? Can you tell me? It was pretty much a learn as you go thing.
Mm.
And the hardest thing for me was having to leave my family behind and for them to not have me there.
Now, I want to come back to you, but that's a good segue. Paula, could you speak more to what you were experiencing on the outside while he was in there, from what you saw as far as the family perspective? What did you see?
Yeah. So, for your audience, to get a little bit more of the background, at this time that this is happening, I was working overnight, and I was on a third shift, and I couldn't leave the building of the facility that I was in, and I got a call from my dad at midnight, and he said, the police came, there's about 12 officers here, and they've taken your brother, and without shoes, it's raining, and they won't let me leave the house. So they were holding him hostage in his house. And he's like, and they want permission to search the house. And I didn't know anything about law. I didn't know anything about the police department. We're taught, and we teach our children that whatever law enforcement tells you, you follow and you obey. So we were raised that way. But I did know that a law enforcement agency needed permission to search your house. I said, well, they can't just search the house. They have to provide, something that says, a warrant that says they need to search the house. But at this time, I had no idea the degree of the severity of what was happening. And as I hung up the phone and I was just praying and trying to figure out like what's going on, I couldn't leave. When I got off the next day, that's when we went to look for him at the different law enforcement departments, and we couldn't find him in all 3 cities that we were in. And for almost 48 hours, we had no idea where he was at. And so it was traumatizing to a family because my dad said, well, he's 17, he's a minor, I have to go with him, and they said, no, technically he's 17 and he's considered an adult.
Wow.
And so that, to my father, was like, it hit him, like, I can't be there for my son. So we were just trying to figure out where he was, and we finally found out that he was in a trailer being interrogated. And the one detective said, in about 72 hours, they're either going to release him or charge him. And so sure enough, that Monday, I called the number that they told me, and the operator said, he's been charged with first-degree murder, and his bond is $5 million. And he was having bond court that next day. And so I remember just falling to the ground and just having this sense of like my life had just been turned upside down. And I just cried in that bathroom stall, and I thought to myself, like, what is going to happen? And so fast forward to the next day, we went to bond court, and that's when we found out that it was a murder situation. And we were like trying to figure out what's going on. Did he do it? And, and unfortunately his passenger had shot and killed a teenager in our community, and the teenager passed. And even though he didn't know, he was still in the vehicle when it happened. And so, his whole thing was, I didn't know my passenger was going to do this. Mm-hmm. And the detectives just kept drilling in his head, you did know. And finally, after 72 hours of, not being fed, not drinking, not sleeping, he finally, wrote what they wanted him to say. And so that's where this whole thing, turned around. And so we went to court, and then we went across the street with my dad and found an attorney and, paid the thousands of dollars you do to seek help, and went through the next couple months of trying to figure out, like, what is going on in our family. He was taken, we're now trying to figure out, and he never once said I wasn't there. He just said, I didn't have knowledge that my passenger, now charge him for having made the mistake of being in this vehicle, but not with a murder. And in the state of Illinois, you're held as accountable by being in that vehicle. You're held just as responsible. And so the fight then turned into him having to make a decision. You know, do you take a plea deal or do you fight and say, I didn't do it? And we chose to fight. And that is where our story took off. We said, you cannot take a plea deal. And I encourage anybody out there, if you know that you are innocent, it is very hard to take a plea deal and come back and say, I didn't do it, I made a mistake, this isn't true. Fight it. It may take some time, and he got sentenced to 35 years at 100%. At the age of 17, that's when he got arrested. And at the age of 19, he went to maximum security prison. And so we as a family had to sit in that trial, and when they found him guilty, we were devastated. Your whole life is turned upside down. As a family unit, everything is broken. Your mother's broken, your father's broken, my sister was broken, I was broken. And we went through 4 years of everyone in our family going through a different season of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, because we were all trying to fill a hole. You know, he's been taken from the family. We don't know how this happened. We don't know why it happened. And we really felt like the system had let us down. And, you know, we fought. And we had no other choice is to fight. And I'm not going to lie. It took years of crying out to God and begging him to just show us what to do. And slowly but surely, God started to just send people. You know, people here and there that said, you know, how can I help you? How can I pray for you? And I went on a journey that I admit now wasn't something I wanted to do. You know, I look back and, you know, don't often share with him because I made a choice as a sister to fight for him, you know, but there was often times that I felt like, man, maybe I missed out on something in my life, you know, maybe I could have had something different. And to me, that's just the enemy trying to come and say, you did something wrong, you wasted your time. But in reality, that's not true. I can look back at every single year where God brought someone new, I met someone different, and I was invited to sit at a table with people that were making a difference in their communities, in their counties, and across the state. And those invitations you only get by being faithful to your community.
And I would say to your calling, because I can obviously see, and I think everybody else sees, that this has turned into a calling for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the effects, you guys are articulating it so well, the effects of mass incarceration on the family. Taking plea deals or not taking plea deals, you know, being, I guess, ransacked into, just pushed into a case where now you guys spend, 35 years, so it's 13.
35, yes.
Man, 100% of the case, you have to serve that time. I don't know how to put it in words. I have family members that have gone off and they went to jail, and we just, you know, sometimes it's, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, you don't expect to see him again. Then one day I turned on Facebook and I saw you with Juan, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, it's happening. Like, it happened. So to see that you all went through this great ordeal and you're still here, man, hats off.
It's time to change the narrative.
Paula, you did such an excellent job in articulating what the family goes through. I want to go into what you saw, Juan, what you experienced, some things you didn't experience, or what you may have heard as far as what your family was going through while you were on the inside. What was that looking like for you?
For me, it was hard because the simple fact that, for one, you not being there for them, that's where it hits you the hardest. I mean, all you hear is through the word of mouth, through the phone, conversations, you know, through letters, whatever it may be, all you hear is just their daily life situations, their stories, everything that happens. I mean, for me, it hit me the hardest because I felt helpless. I felt like I couldn't do nothing for them. No matter how much they tell me like this is going on, you know, and whatnot, I felt like I couldn't, like it was eating me inside. Wow. Like I couldn't be there for them. I couldn't be there like I'm supposed to be, the son, the brother, you know, for my sisters, my parents and stuff. It's it ate me up. It ate me up bad, man.
How did you live with the remorse for what happened to the teen? You didn't know that the person you were in the car with was going to do that or commit that crime.
Correct.
But they're charging you, as the world needs to know, that if you're in the car, that's how the state of Illinois does it.
Oh, they charge you
Wisconsin,
with the accountability.
Yeah.
So pretty much it's,
It's as if you did it.
as if you did it pretty much, yeah.
How did you deal with that? Because now, even though you may see it differently, this is how they view you and this is what they've charged you with. How did that play in your mind during your sentence and your time away?
Well, the whole time I knew that I didn't do it. And just the simple fact that they would charge me with something that I know I didn't do. And there was nothing pretty much like for me to do. It was just something that it was stuck on me, and that's what it was. So I had to just ride the wave and see what happens and hope for the best, I totally feel bad for the family, for the teenager. I did not know him. It's tragic.
And it sounds to me, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me, based on what happened at school that day and you coming home and it playing out in your neighborhood, I don't think maybe you wanted to take it that far. And so had you known that he was going to do that, you probably wouldn't have been involved. Like, no, I'm not going to kill him. I'm not going to kill him. And so, that, I guess it's hard to hear that you had sleep deprivation and all that, and you had to speak to some people who were investigating you, and now you're saying, okay, well, you're giving them a statement, which is what we really need to warn people about making statements and not having someone there to represent you. This all plays out to where we're at now.
Right.
Speak to, this is heavy for me because we talked about this behind the scenes. Speak to what you experienced when you got out. You've been away for a long time. I think, 17 years old, last thing you probably remember was MySpace. You said
MySpace and flip phones.
Flip phones. Okay, now talk about Wi-Fi. Talk about Wi-Fi and some other things that you experienced.
Oh my gosh, the Wi-Fi. I had a friend that mentioned Wi-Fi one time, and I didn't know, this is before I got out, I didn't know that what Wi-Fi was. So he just mentioned to me, he's like, hey, you ready to go out there and use the Wi-Fi? I'm like, I guess. I'm like, I don't know, little do I don't know what it is, so I'm just going along with him. I'm like, yeah, okay. So he started explaining to me afterwards. Then that's when when I came out afterwards, that's when I seen all the new phones. No more flip phones. The Instagram, the Facebook, the Snapchat, anything, all that brand new to me.
So you come out and now this guy is calling Wi-Fi Wi-Fi. You no more MySpace. Do they still have MySpace? I don't even know. But you got Instagram now. You got Facebook. I'm just curious. How did you, just get on Facebook for the first time? How did that wow you? Or was it shocking? All like stuff we take as the norm. What was that like for you?
To be honest, it took me a while to get on social media. I didn't get no social media right away. I tried to focus on me. I tried to do me, what I was going through. I just tried to stay focused on that till afterwards. Then I started going through all the Facebook and stuff.
How was it as far as you going into the community? Did you feel like, some people say they experienced judgment, people finding out about your background? We're believers, so, we're new creation in Christ, but everybody doesn't believe like that. So did you experience some hardship as far as, okay, I'm out now, but yet people won't let you feel like you have to explain yourself? How did that play out?
I mean, I knew the whole time that people knew about me. There was always that, I'm not going to say a risk, there was always that possibility of running into somebody that knows you, that knows about you. And of course, if it's happened to me already, and I run into people like, "Oh, you're Juan?" I'm like, "I don't even know you," but it's all through my sister. That's why, because they know her and they, she's mentioned me. They see pictures and stuff, so that's how they know me. Yeah. But
you know what? I got to speak to that because that's actually how I met you. I was, scrolling down Facebook page and I saw a picture of you with Paula, and she was celebrating you, just coming out.
Right.
And she had spoken about, we knew about, she said, pray for my brother and things of that nature. But this was for a while. It had been a while. So it's like, when you get cases like that, I'll be honest with you, it's like, I don't know if I'm ever see him.
Right.
Let's be real. When I saw you, it was like, it was more than just social media. It was like it was a milestone moment. It was like, wow. It's like you can't type enough to say how much, I don't know how to even put it in words. And so, Paula, just, you dealing with that for so long, and then talk about how the entire family, including yourself, how did you even find out that the time, I guess you maxed out on your time?
No.
You didn't?
No. So what ended up happening is obviously we fought until his appeals kept going through, and he'd win some, he'd lose some, and our whole goal was to prove that the detectives in his case had lied and withheld information to find him guilty, which is how he ended up winning his case, having it reversed and remanded in 2010. So this happened in 2004. So people that didn't know, like, that's what my advocacy was, listen, these detectives, I'm not judging them. We've forgiven them. They made a poor decision. They broke the law. It's called a Brady violation. And we fought hard to prove that that's what had happened. And unfortunately, our county is known for wrongful convictions. At one point, it was the number one in the country for wrongful convictions. So we've seen these cases over and over. So that's what I was out there letting people know. Like, listen, these detectives lied, withheld information, and we finally proved that in 2010. And it took us 4 years to fight the lower courts to basically say, hey, you need to give him a new trial, or you need to dismiss, the charge, or charge him with something less. So those were the three options. And finally, the lower courts exhausted all their extensions, and then the judge had to say, okay, we're moving forward. And the lower court still said, yeah, we made a mistake, but we're not going to grant him a new trial. And that was a big blow. And that was in 2014, I think. Yeah. And at that point, we really had to regroup, and just, again, a testament of the strength that wasn't from me, the strength that didn't come from my family, the strength that came from God, because it's the one moment where you're like, we've spent thousands of dollars. We're in debt up to our ears, but that doesn't matter because we're going to prove that this should never have happened. And we fought in 2016. The appellate court, the second appellate court, ruled again. They were the first ones to rule that the lower courts had made a mistake and had to redo this again. They ruled again, and there was a chance that they could have ruled and said, okay, the lower courts are right, there's nothing we can do. And they said, no, now this is going to be reversed and remanded, and now they're telling the lower courts, you have to do this over. Either you dismiss him, charge him again for first-degree murder, or you charge him with a lesser crime, which is what he ended up having to make a decision on his own. It was difficult for me as a sister, having fought for all these years, 12 at that time, I think 10 years, and saying, like, hold in there, you hold off until the charge that is the least amount for the time he had served. Anything he would have been given under first-degree murder, as long as it wasn't anything in the murder category, he had already served time for it. So, he was in the Lake County Jail for 2 years, just waiting for the courts to decide, what charge they were going to offer him. And that's when he had to decide, like, how long do I hold off for? And he said, you know what? They offered me, this charge, and it's 26 years at 50%. And at that very moment, he had already served 50% of his time. And thankfully, in that case as well, he only owed the state 60 more days. And because he had gotten his GED in Lake County gives you 60 days good credit for having completed your GED at the end of your sentence. So that washed away those 60 days. And then, unfortunately, so he goes back and he owes them a couple, more weeks. And the state, the maximum security prison he got sent back to made a clerical error. And instead of subtracting 60 days, they added 600 days to his sentence. And so we're waiting for him to come home, and the attorney's calling, like, be prepared to, he's going to just call you one day and say, they're putting me on a bus tomorrow or picking me up tomorrow. And so we called the prison and we're like, can you give us a heads up of what is going on? And they're like, oh, it says he'll be out in 600 more days. And we're like, 600? Like, that's a mistake. So I quickly got on the phone with the attorney and I was like, you're not going to believe this. And he's like, I can't believe this. So he has to, overnight and fax paperwork and all of this stuff to say, hey, you guys made a mistake. He should be out. They did the exact calculations as to how much time he owed them. And on November 17th, he finally got to come home after all this.
Next, we stop.
It's time to change the narrative.
Okay, I knew this show was going to be crazy. We got some information, some things I didn't know. I'm sure you're going to hear some things that you don't know. I need you to bring it in for us because there's so much we talked about off camera, behind the scenes, about the case and how, I hope that people hear this, if you're fighting a case and fighting the courts, how not to get discouraged because you were an advocate for real. You stayed in there. You all didn't give up. Talk to us about how that even happened because you went through a whole process where people would just stop and say, I quit. So run us through that about some of the things that will make somebody want to quit and what you did to persevere.
For me, I'll admit there was plenty of moments and plenty of times that I wanted to quit. It was hard, just like anything else. You're fighting against a system that is not designed to admit they made a mistake and to admit that they have to fix it. So when we won the appellate case in 2010, we're like, this is great. This is almost over, And in reality, it had just begun. We went through 4 years of fighting the lower courts in the county to say, okay, now what do we do? And they're like, well, we made a mistake, and after 4 years, but we're not going to dismiss the case, and we're not going to try them again, and that's it. And we were like, this can't be happening. And so we went back to, the drawing board, and said, what do we do? And so then spoke to, to my family, and we had to make a decision that we couldn't, at that point, we had exhausted our funds to have a, private attorney. So we were dependent on the public defender for about 2 years. And we just knew from observing the court cases we were going to that this person was not the right person for us. And by this point, my faith with God had obviously grown, and I had learned to ask God what it is that I wanted and what it is that I needed. And in this particular case, I needed an attorney that had experience in a case like my brother's, which is unheard of in the county. In Cook County, they have a whole division that deals with this, and here they didn't. And so I went through 3 circles of networks of friends that I had in different areas, Chicago and Lake County, and my church family. And I said, listen, this is what I need. I need an attorney that handles cases and has experience in this area. And 2 out of the 3 circles said the same name. And so I went to that attorney, and it turns out that, he lived, in the town that I work in, and he turned out to be a customer at my job. And so we went to our family and we said, hey, we have to hire him. And, then you go through that difficult decision. This isn't, it's expensive. We're talking over $70,000 in legal fees over a 13-year span. That's a lot of money. My parents had to take out a second mortgage. I had maxed out all my credit cards and took loans, and but I had nothing else to lose at this point. I needed to fight, and I needed to fight for my family. And we hired him, and he came in and he was like, here's the plan and here's what we're going to do. And that's when we got back into court and we started fighting. And we went through the system, and he finally accepted an offer, and they said you're going to be coming home in I think 75 days, and the courts had given him 60 days good credit for his GED. Goes to maximum security prison, because that's where he has to come out of. And instead of being given 60 days good credit, they tagged on 600 days, and we had to fight through that. And so finally he came home in November 17 of 2017, and it was the most special moment in my life. I can't explain it.
I can only imagine. And I need you to give us a perspective of how you felt, because at one point you're hearing that you're coming home. And then, you got your 60 days, and then you went to school, so that should knock the 60 days out. And then you're getting ready to go to the joint, so to speak, and just do whatever time. And then instead of 60, it's 600. So, what's going through your mind here? Because if you feel like you're coming home and then that happens,
man. How should I say? I was happy when I found out that I was gonna get out. My thing was, I didn't know when. I was trying to do my calculations to give me an idea of when I was gonna be able to get out. But at the same time, I knew that I still had to go back and still go through their little phase and stuff before I actually made it out. So that for me right there was it's really nothing, because I've been in there for so long already, so it's something that I'm already used to. So when I actually did go back, I believe it was 6-7 weeks before I actually got out. Those last couple weeks, I swear they were the longest 6 weeks of my life than the actual time that I did.
Wow. Talk about, this is so good. Talk about that first day. The first day out. What did you do? What happened? Who was at the gate? How did this, give us the process. Take us there.
I knew I was getting out on let me go back. My out day fell on a weekend.
Okay.
So the prison system, they don't do releases on the weekend because their business, their office hours are closed. So if your out day falls on a weekend, you get out on Friday. So mine fell out on a Sunday, I believe. So I was able to leave on a Friday. So my sister, my younger sister, she drove up there with her boyfriend to come pick me up. And I don't even think I had sleep that night because I knew I was leaving the next day. I believe my sister got there around 9 because they told her to come pick me up around 9:30 because that's the time they release inmates. And I get my stuff ready. I'm in my room waiting. It's 9 o'clock, 9:30 hits. I don't hear nobody calling me, come to pick me up or anything. A couple hours go by, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So they were waiting for all the paperwork to go through and everything. I went through the little process actually making it out. Once I actually made it out, that first fresh breath air, man.
Yeah.
It felt so good. It felt so just that weight lifted off my shoulders. Just everything that I was carrying for that whole time, man.
I'm looking at Paula and how every word that you're saying is affecting her. And
I'd never asked him, how he felt. I wasn't able to be there. It was, sadly I had, work stuff, and I'm able to do everything else. And then this particular time, the moment that I felt like I needed to be there, I couldn't. And so my sister, did it. So I felt like I missed out on that. But I also felt like it was a gift to her because she wanted to help me in a lot of the things, advocating for him. But she couldn't because we wanted her to focus on work and school. I didn't want her to be distracted, or I wanted her to still live her life, and it felt like a sacrifice. I'll handle this. I'll take care of it. And so in this moment, I felt like God was saying, let her have this, you know. And I remember her coming home and just sharing with me what it felt like for her to be the one to be there, you know. And what most people don't know is that we surprised our parents. They knew he would be coming home before the end of the year, but they didn't know the day he was coming home. So we told them that Friday that he was coming home, we were going to go visit him one last time before, because we still don't know when he was coming home. So we were coming over with dinner, and we have a video, which I'll repost on my Facebook, of the moment when he comes in. And my sister and we videotaped it, and it was a complete surprise to them. And I gotta tell you that people watch that video and they're like, you can't watch it and not cry. To see my mom wailing and my dad like sobbing, and when my brother touched his face, my dad didn't see him. My dad just felt his hand, and he thought to himself, I've felt this hand before, but he never registered that it was my brother until he finally looked, and then it was the shock of like, he's here, you know. And that moment meant everything for our family. It was finally like, we're together again. But it wasn't an easy journey. I spent 13 and a half years praying for his freedom, and I feel like the part that I missed was praying for his post-freedom, because you don't anticipate that as a family unit you have to start over. We spent 13 years not celebrating holidays, not celebrating birthdays, not even being able to share meals together, because it was too difficult for my mom and dad to share a meal knowing that their son was eating prison food. And so I had to be comfortable not celebrating holidays and spending them with other people. So I got so used to that now when we get to create new memories and share these holidays, it's slightly uncomfortable. Not because I want to, but because I've train my mind and my heart to be okay not having it. That now that we have it, it's hard to like be like, okay, it's okay to feel this moment. But we talk about it as a family, and I definitely want people to know that the mental health of the entire family is something important that they have to take care of. We've talked about we all share the same family doctor, and she said to us as a family, you have to remember that your brother has PTS. And that's common. And you also can't treat him as he's now 33. At that point, he was, 2 years ago. You can't treat him like a 30-something-year-old man. You have to treat him as the 17-year-old that went in there. Yes, he's grown. Yes, he's matured, and he's different. But you have to allow him to make 17-year-old mistakes, 18-year-old mistakes, just like you and your sister did. And that's hard, because you look at him and I'm like, he's a man, he should be doing A, B, and C. And it's like, he's doing well. He has a full-time job. He's going to school. But he also has a life that he gets to live. And he gets to go through that process. And to have a doctor that understands that and says you all need to see someone professionally so that you can each process what each one of you went through. We all went through something different during the season that he was incarcerated. And that's hard, to have to come to the realization that, hey, I'm struggling with things that I need to process because of what I went through and because of what I fought for. And he's open to that, and that's incredible. There's not many men that will admit, like, I do need to talk to someone. So I think that's really important for your audience to know, is that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to say we don't have the answers, and it's okay to say, like, this is raw and uncut. Like, we struggle with things, and I always can't be the one for him to come and talk to, or my sister to come and talk to, because I don't always have the answers, and I'm biased. I want to be protective and I want to help, but there's professionals out there that will help you go through a process of that healing from point A to point B. I mean, our families always can't be that point of contact.
Paula, I want to say I've been in many circles dealing with mass incarceration, recidivism, anything having to do with reentry, repatriates, returning citizens. I have never heard anybody address mental illness for the entire family. I've never heard of that. I want to thank you for breaking that down for us in a way that's so simple for everybody to get it. That the entire family, we know the entire family is affected, but the way that you just shared that, and by the way, thank you for allowing your younger sister to experience that moment. But also thank you for being, she needed to experience that. But you were an advocate through the entire process. You're the reason, one of the reasons God used you to allow this moment to happen. You know, I remember when I came out and it's called being institutionalized. We used to put our pants under the mattress and lay on the mattress to get them really creased
up.
Yeah, I did that like when I was out. Like one time, instead of just using the iron is in there, use the iron. No, I'm gonna put them under my mattress and sleep overnight. It's like you're carrying the institution on the outside, which makes you institutionalized. And so, in so many ways, we look like we're okay, but we're all. It has a. In case you don't know, somebody said, "I went to prison. I did." No, you went to prison, but you're still experiencing it mentally. All of us are affected by it, and so that's why our minds need to be renewed. I believe by the Word of God. I believe you need to have family members that understand on a practical level. It's okay to go to a therapist. Somebody, it's okay. And so, brother, could you talk about, I'm gonna need you to break it down as far as like, even if it's funny, like some of the things that you carried from the inside out to give them an understanding of just because you hit the gate, it's not over.
Well, for me, I always had a routine. For me, it was always a routine every day. Every day I always had something to do. So it kept me not only busy, but some of those things like carried on with me out here when I got out. Like my number one thing, I have OCD like really bad. That's my number one thing. I have OCD. I have to have everything organized. I have everything perfect. Everything. Every time I got up in the morning, I always made my bed, my sheets, put everything together. I still do that to this day.
So and you know what? Some of these things are not bad, but it's just like you see how it's a part of our life now. Like we do these things, and you know it's a ritual almost.
Right.
You know, and so what are some of the things that the family now?
Yeah.
You know, you spoke about dealing with birthdays. This is huge. That they wouldn't celebrate certain birthdays and things of that nature because we're not going to eat. How do you transition now after 13 years to now celebrate? How does that work?
I think it's still tough. It's still tough because, you know, obviously we're there to honor our parents, and their biggest joy is just having us together. So, you know, the holidays aren't the same and the birthdays aren't the same. The unity is different, and that to us is like, it's priceless. So we can see each other and just be together. But you just have to you just have to create new memories. It's like being adopted into a new family with the same family.
Wow.
You know, you have you're the same family, but now you're adopted. Now you're saying we're going to start over and let's create new traditions. And what does that look like for us? I never imagined that. Again, I prayed for his freedom, but I never prayed for the post-freedom to say, help us deal with being together and communicating with each other. Because, you know, and he knows this. The one thing I struggled, and my sister, is communicating with him. Because, there'd be times he'd talk to us like he was in there and we were one of, his cellmates, and we were like, don't talk to me like that or don't say that. And he'd be like, but again, the doctor we have was incredible to say, that's just how he's used to talking to people. That's going to take some time, and as women, we're like, no, you try to put a stop to it, let's change it. But it took a lot out of me and my sister to say, we have to allow him that space to grow and come into himself, to allow him to accept him for who he was coming out of there, and that he had lived a different life. He had to get used to a different family. So traditionally, he had his things in there and we had our stuff at home. When we did get together for dinner, my parents still made a plate for him. In their minds, they were determined that he was going to come home, and if we were going to get together, we were going to pray for him, and we were going to make a space for him at the table. And I'll never forget when I moved out of the house and moved into my own space, I had bought a new bed in his room because I slept in this room for a long time. and I bought a new bed, and I told God, I hope that one day he can sleep in this very bed. Like, I'm buying a new bed just for him. And this was 4 or 5 years prior to him coming home and me having no idea he'd be coming home. And I remember buying that bed. And then my dad, the last 2 years before my brother came home, he struggled just feeling like something was changing without us knowing that he would be coming home soon. And my dad was like, I'm not comfortable sleeping in my own bed. So my dad would go into his room and he would sleep on the floor next to the bed that I had bought him. And he would sleep there and say, God, I know that one day you're going to put my son in this bed. I'm not even going to sleep in it. I just want to sleep on the floor and try, and I'll never forget, and just trust that he's going to be here. And I'll never forget, he couldn't sleep. When he got home, he didn't sleep for 2 days? He spent like 48 hours not sleeping. And when he went in there and finally laid down, I'll never forget my dad just standing on the door and just crying, watching my brother sleep and thinking like, this is all I wanted. And as a parent, like I said, I don't have kids, but as a parent, to just tell God, thank you for allowing my child to just be back in his bed in something we trusted in you for 4 years. I mean, much longer than that. That's God, That's a God thing. And not, I remember taking a picture of my dad being on this floor and thinking, only you, because I was willing to do everything else, but I'm not sleeping on the floor. Like, come on now. But he was like, no, I trust that I'm going to be in this room and my son's going to be in this bed. And that's an unconditional love that only comes from a parent that is like, I trust wholeheartedly that God is going to bring my son home.
I'm messed up right now.
It's time to change the narrative.
Listen, family, I am messed up. We got to bring this to a halt before I fall out. This story is too amazing. I'm absolutely sure that a lot of my friends and some of you all out there did not know all this. I didn't know all this. I'm messed up right now. And so I'm going to try to bring all this in, which is very difficult. But pray for me. But we got to bring this in somehow. So I would like them to, if you could, give them information as to how they could reach you. I believe that you have such a story that maybe there's somebody out there that might see this and say, you know what, I want to be involved in the process of you re-entering back into society. I want to support you all, especially for the advocacy that you've done and the work that you're doing and getting yourself back in. Maybe I want to send a donation or support. And so if you could keep that in the back of your mind, at the end of this segment, I'd like you to all to speak to that. But before we go, either one of you, actually both of you, what would you want the viewers to know based on what you've experienced? You've helped us so much, but what are some things that you absolutely want them to know based on what you dealt with that might help them?
Well, for me, it was the whole family thing. I made a poor decision, poor choice in life that cost me 13 years of my life that I can't get back anymore. So I always tell everybody, it's like, whatever choice you make, no matter what, you always got to look at who's going to be affected at the end.
Wow.
It's going to be you, and most importantly, your family. Because your family's going to go through it with you no matter what. So it's just like I was telling you earlier, it's a mental thing. Yeah. You got to mentally prepare yourself. Like for me, I went in at 19 at a maximum prison. I wasn't ready for that, but I had to learn to adjust to my environment. You have to learn to live that life now, because that's your part of your life now. That's how I thought at that time. Me having all that time and going in there, like now my mentality was like, okay, I have all this time now. I'm in here. Now I gotta live this life. I gotta adjust to this life, this environment. I have to do everything that in my power to stay alive, to, make it through each and every day. I would say, you get yourself stuck in a situation or something, just make sure you make the right decision, make the right choice. You know, always ask for a lawyer.
Yes.
Don't ever sign anything without your lawyer being present, please.
You have learned.
Please.
Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, if you would like to reach me or whatever, my sister has a Facebook page that you guys can reach her and she can let me know.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, so I'm glad you asked. So I have a couple things, you know, and he said one of them that's important is, you know, we're not out here saying, you know, that all law enforcement officers are one way or another. You know, if you made a poor decision, that doesn't blanket the whole, you know, I've met some incredible police officers that are doing tremendous work out here, and, you know, we're grateful to them. In this particular case, you know, this launched me on a mission to try to find out more about my law enforcement department, and, you know, I support them and do ride-alongs and done the Citizens Police Academy just to get a little bit of their life as well. And they have a very difficult job. But yeah, you know, if you find yourself in a position, you have the right to ask for an attorney, and don't sign anything, especially if you're under the age of 18. You know, ask for your parents, ask for an attorney, you know, and don't give up. And, you know, as an encouragement, you know, other thing I learned that is very important is the power of voting. In my journey of 13 years, I learned that there is people that make decisions on our behalf that have a whole lot of power. That affect what will happen to us in the event we're found in a position like my brothers. And it's important to know who your elected officials are. It's important to hold them accountable when you see them voting in a way that is going to hurt hundreds and thousands of people later on down the line. And we have the power to change that. You know, we have elections locally. You have them, you know, statewide, and you have them as a country. And I want to encourage everybody, if you are not a registered voter, go and register to vote. Your vote matters. Your vote counts. And I learned that over 13 years of meeting different elected officials that had a lot of power in decision making and making laws that, you know, don't seem right and don't make sense in our community. So that's, you know, another. But, you know, the other thing is if you don't already have a church family, cry out to God and let him know that you need that. I did that for years because I needed something outside of myself that could encourage me. My family couldn't do it. It was my church family, and I say families because I went through, you know, different churches and different groups that poured into me that this is in God's hands. And I never gave up on my brother, but there was one thing I gave up on, and that was trying to change the outcome. I had to decide and come to a decision and tell God, I give up. I leave it in your hands. Use me in my life. Whatever you have for me, I will follow. But I no longer want to be worried about the outcome of what's going to happen with him. And I had to be content and say to God, I will trust you whether he has to serve 35 years at 100% or whether you bring him home tomorrow. I will be just as grateful. And that was the biggest thing for me, is having to finally surrender to God and say, this is you, and you're doing something much bigger than me. And so when I thought my life was over, the day he got found guilty, God, I couldn't see it in the midst of the crying and the tears and the sorrow. God was saying, your life has just begun. Had it not been for his situation, I would not be doing what I'm doing in the community now. I would not be serving the veterans. I would not have met incredible people like yourself in the community making a difference. And that all came from a very tragic situation that I can't explain. Someone lost their son, and that is incredibly tragic and sad, and that we can't explain. But I do know that there's a God that was faithful to what we asked for. And I encourage people out there, find a church, just reach out to somebody and let them know that you need help. You know, you want to talk to somebody, and whatever you ask God for, you know, be patient. He doesn't answer right away. It took me 13 years for this to be answered. And just be patient with it, and then don't give up. You know, be encouraged. The support system is the most important part in being able to get through this.
REENTRY Uncut.
It's time to change the narrative.